This car is one of 4 built with an unbelievably rare option. Can you guess what it is? I think one of the neat aspects of looking at muscle cars is that back in the late 60s and early 70s, a customer could walk in and order things basically off the menu. You know, today you go to a dealership, and although you can go buy, I think, one of 10 different packages on a new Dodge Challenger, back in the 60s and 70s, you could actually find individual option items that could be added to your particular car, and you might end up with the only one in the world that has that particular option. And today, we're looking at just such a car. When you first look at this car, it's a very imposing looking bright red 1970 Dodge Challenger, and it's a cool looking car. It's very aggressive, it's very basic. That Code FE5 paint really stands out, and when you start to notice the details, you see it's got the 15x7-inch steel wheels with the dog dish hubcaps on it, and raised white letter tires. You notice the wing on the back of the car, and then of course the RT badge. RT of course stands for Road Track. The RT package came with a bunch of different items, including a 150-mile-an-hour speedometer in the dashboard. It also had an 8,000 RPM tachometer. There is no radio in this car, and there's no other creature comforts like air conditioning. So it was bought to be a lightweight racing version of a Challenger RT. But this particular car doesn't really have much else. You've got a lower front spoiler and of course the rear wing on the back. The RT also had the flip open fuel gauge, and a lot of RTs came with a stripe, but this one has a stripe delete package on it. So this car really is just a whole bunch of red and black. Now the RT package started off with a base 383 cubic inch V8, but this one is one of just 150 that were built with a 426 Hemi. So it's got 2 4-barrel carburetors, a 425 horsepower rating, 490 pound-feet of torque. It's attached to a TorqueFlite 727 automatic 3-speed transmission, and it's got a 410 gear in the Dana rear axle. So when you consider everything this car has to offer, it kind of looks like it was built for drag racing. It's lightweight, doesn't have any options, has a lot of power, and we like all of that, and we would feature this car because of that stuff. But there's one more thing on this car that makes it different from all the rest. This car is one of 4 built with an unbelievably rare option. Can you guess what it is? At first glance, this looks like a 1970 Dodge Challenger TA. After all, it's got the blacked out hood with the big scoop on it. But you look closer and it says 426 Hemi on the side of that scoop, because this is actually a Dodge Challenger RT with the 426 Hemi and the extremely rare N94 fiberglass hood. This hood was more commonly found on the Challenger TA cars, and the TA cars were the Trans Am homologation cars. It's kind of a snorkel-looking hood scoop, and on the TA cars it sat above a 340 cubic inch V8. So it's very unusual to see the N94 hood on a Challenger RT. And these Chryslers are a little bit easier to document when it comes to different options, because they have what's known as the fender tag, which shows every option the car came with, and on this one you can see the N94 for this hood stamped right on that tag. And speaking of trim tags, this thing really doesn't have many other options on it. It's got dog dish caps, no side mirror, no vinyl top, no stripes, doesn't even have a radio. But it does have the goods where it counts, a 426 under the special hood. In fact, there's only 4 of these things known to have been built as RTs with that N94 hood. If you bought a Hemi Challenger RT, typically it would have a shaker scoop on it, but this one doesn't. And the hood is very cool because it is finished in black Organisol, which is kind of a black textured paint, just as it would be on the TA cars. But here it sits on an RT. Of the other 3 cars known to have been built with this hood, I think 2 of them still survive and 1 was long gone. The one that doesn't exist anymore was also a Hemi car. The other 2 have smaller V8s. So this was one of 2 Hemis built with this hood, and it's the only one known to be surviving today. It's a very fascinating piece. Now, in researching this car, we learned a bunch of different stories of the lifespan of this particular car. Some people say that there was a shortage of shaker scoops, and that's why this one ended up with the TA hood. I don't really know as a fact, so that's still up in the air. Otherwise, we know that this car lived a long life. One story suggests it was bought by a mechanic who raced it in the Midwest, which certainly fits the bill for what the car is. There's another story that suggests this thing was painted with a wild fish scale type paint scheme in the 70s and then restored back to its original color scheme by the late 70s. Online, you'll find photographs of this car attending the Mopar Nationals events in the early 1980s. And what we've learned there is that this car lived in Texas at that point and was actually driven up to St. Louis and to other shows in the Midwest. Could you imagine today getting behind the wheel of a 426 Hemi car and driving it across country, especially knowing that it's probably the only one in existence of its kind? You know, the high value that the collectors have driven these things to just doesn't really warrant that kind of stuff anymore, but it's cool to know that this car did those kind of things. The car then changed hands and went to Florida and eventually was purchased again and treated to a complete restoration and shown to the public once again at the Muscle Car and Corvette Nationals in Chicago in its fully restored, correct condition as we see it here today. It's a very cool car. It's got a great story behind it. It's very documented, and it fits right in with some of the other unique Mopars in the Brothers collection. Much of the history of this car is known. In fact, it was suggested that it was bought to be a race car from day one. Today, it lives in the Brothers collection, and we were happy to share it with you. If you like this kind of stuff, our website's open 24 hours. Come on by and we'll show you more cars from the Brothers collection.